If you'd like to be able to listen to the show without ads and have full access to bonus content, that's an option. To find out how, please go to dogmanencounters.com/podcast. Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for this special episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. Really appreciate you being here. For tonight's show, we've got a guest who's been a regular on the show. He's been on several times, and he's actually a fan favorite, whether he wants to admit it or not. He probably won't, but that's the truth. That's how it is. Of course, I'm talking about Al Santariga, and we've got another guest who I've known about for quite some time. I've known that he's been a dogman researcher for the North American Dogman Project. Well, for quite some time, I've kicked around the idea of asking him to come on the show. Wasn't sure what his response would be, but recently I asked him about doing a show with Al, and he luckily agreed to come on and do this. So for tonight's show, what we're going to do is we've got a specialist here, Al, from New York State when it comes to dogman encounters. And we also have a specialist here, Patrick from Texas, who they're both going to be here to share case files, answer questions, general questions about both of their regions, and all kinds of other things. Well, without any further ado, let's bring them in here now. Al and Patrick, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having me, Vic.
Oh, you're welcome. You are welcome. Al, you've been on the show several times, like I said, but I'm sure there are people listening who missed those episodes. With that in mind, please tell us about yourself.
Yes, my name is Al Santariga. I'm the director of the Bronxville Paranormal Society, the New York State Sasquatch Organization, the New York State UFO Project, and the New York State Dogman Project. I'm also Region 3 director for the North American Dogman Project and a MUFON member.
Goodness gracious, Al, do you have time to eat? Yeah, starting to wonder there. How about you, Patrick?
Patrick Bryan. I'm the Texas State Rep for the North American Dogman Project. Prior to joining the project about a year and a half ago, I mainly specialized in paranormal investigations, but something brought me to the dogman community, and I really do like it here.
Well, that's great. That sure beats alternative. Al, you've been on the show several times, like I said, talking about a lot of dogman related topics with me, but here's a subject that we've never broached. I'm sure it's not lost on you that a lot of the listeners will like to try their own hand at being dogman investigators, but what is it about being a dogman investigator that you don't think most of those people have considered when it comes to doing this kind of work?
The fear factor. You really put yourself in harm's way when you go out there looking for these creatures. They're not gentle, huggable, lovable creatures by any stretch of the imagination. I don't believe they're bloodthirsty killers either, at least not all the time. I mean, I've walked out of the woods many times, and yeah, I really try to turn people away from doing that, going out looking for them and putting themselves in harm's way. Because, you know why, Vic? And I had this conversation recently. I think Patrick was in the conversation on the feed we had one time on the NADP. There was a guy who wanted to go out. And I said to him, explain to me what you think you know. Because there's a lot of bad information out there, and explain to me what you think you need to protect yourself and in any sort of situation. And he really couldn't answer any of those questions, and he kind of went away. I haven't heard from him since, but I wasn't trying to put the guy on the spot or be mean to him. I just wanted to know what kind of info he had, because I didn't want him going out there with bad information, and I wanted to set him straight, what you need. If you're really going to go out there and do this, what you need to protect yourself in a bad situation. And but I'm not going to tell people what they need to go out there and do this and have them go out on my account, because I think Al told me to do this, and then go out there and get themselves killed or injured. So it's something I don't recommend telling people to do, and I never tell anybody where my locations are, because I don't want anyone going there and trying to investigate and ending up getting themselves killed on my account. That's just the way I feel about it.
Al, I'm so glad you made the points that you did, because it really sticks in my craw. There are so many people who head into the field trying to find a dog man without having answered those questions that you told us about asking that man. It's crazy to go out to put yourself in the presence, or to try to put yourself in the presence of one of these things without having the answers to those questions, in just without any question, just knowing those answers right away. If you haven't put enough thought into doing this to know the answers to those questions that you just brought up, it's insanity to head into the woods and try to put yourself into the presence of a dog man. There's so many people that go out there and do this without planning, with reckless abandon. I mean, it's just a wonder that more people don't get hurt or even killed.
Yeah, and I like I said, I wasn't trying to be mean to the guy or make a fool out of him. I just wanted to hear what he thought he knew, just to set him straight, because you really should get a second opinion on what you think you know, just to make sure that everybody you're talking to, who you believe to be, and I hate this word, experts, because I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but make sure everybody's on the same page. If X is telling you this and Y is telling you that, then somebody is wrong. Don't go out,
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's crazy to think that anyone would be an expert in the dogman field, unless they can just call one up at will and tell you every last thing about them, which no one can. Then you can't be an expert.
Yeah. Like I said, again, I just wanted to know what this gentleman thought he knew, and I guess he may have taken it the wrong way. Being from New York, I have a tendency of coming across the wrong way. I don't know why, but people tend to always take me the wrong way. And I didn't mean to offend him or belittle him by any stretch of the imagination. I just wanted to make sure he knew what he was getting into, and he had the right information in his back pocket that he would need to be out there.
Well, I mean, it's a delicate subject. You handled it in a delicate way. It's a shame that you had to look out for his best interest when he didn't. He was ready to go out there with reckless abandon, and you had to cover for him to make sure that he was ready. It really is a shame that he didn't put more thought into that than that. But Patrick, do your field investigations ever follow you home? In other words, have you had any dogman related nightmares or other issues that were brought on from doing what you do?
To date, I have not. I'm not going to rule out that possibility, though. Actually, if I could I circle around back to what Al was talking about with that conversation?
Sure.
He mentioned that he's not an expert. Nobody in this field is an expert. But if I have Al giving me advice on how to proceed with a situation, I am definitely going to listen to that. And with that gentleman being scared off by Al asking a couple of questions, he was in no way, shape, or form ready to go look for Dogman.
You're right. Really good point. Like I said, I just shudder to think about all these people who put themselves in their presence out there, who just are totally unprepared. If you're unprepared for going to the store because you forgot your list, that's one thing. If you're unprepared to put yourself in the presence of a dog man, totally different. It's just frustrating. It really is. Al, what does your wife think about all the time you spend in the field investigating these things? And has she ever asked to go into the field with you on an investigation?
Oh God, no! She will never come out into the middle of the woods with me. She always. I invite her and my son all the time because they're big skeptics, And I say, just come with me, and they're both like, "Oh, we have better things to do than go hike 4 miles in the woods in the dead of night and sit and freeze our butts off, But she doesn't really believe in cryptids, So I take a lot of abuse from my family.
Wow, that's a shame. Considering how many times you've seen these things, I wish they'd believe you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and they've even come to the house. So I mean, I don't know what else to tell them, So
Yeah, I'd say so. You had one under your front porch. Doesn't
yeah.
get any more intense than that. Patrick, do your kids know what dogmen are and that their daddy investigates cases where eyewitnesses have seen them?
Actually, my daughter, she is 20 and is actually one of the researchers for my team here in Texas.
Wow.
My son is 12 and he is already asking to go out when he's old enough.
Wow. What are your thoughts on that? Do you ever get a little nervous having your daughter out there and possibly being in a situation where she could get hurt?
Well, with us, the researchers actually do more of the time, date, and location, and specifically location where we need to be at. They very rarely go out into the field. Um, Whereas we kind of do run a difference between the investigators and the researchers. My son is definitely wanting to go to the investigator route, and that one does make me a little nervous.
Yeah, I can understand why. We all think back to how we were when we were 18 or capable enough, old enough to do things like this. Then we remember how bulletproof we thought we were. So, yeah, that should make anyone nervous, any father.
Right. That's actually my team is quite a bit of a family. My daughter's the researcher for my team. My son-in-law is an investigator. His cousin is an investigator for us, and his cousin's wife is a researcher / investigator for us as well.
Wow, a lot of family members. That's great.
Yep.
Keeping it in the family.
Definitely want people that can, you're going to have your back when you're out there.
Yes.
Oh, definitely. When you're dealing with something like this. All right, Al, you've prepped some case files that you're going to share with us tonight. Please do that now.
Okay, Vic. I didn't really know how many case files you wanted me to pull. So what I did was I pulled 4, and I kind of edited them to make them shorter because I didn't know how much time we were going to have. 3 of the case files you actually gave to me to interview the witnesses, and I'm sure they were on. I remember they were on your show, and one of them came from a paranormal friend of mine who lives across the river here in Orange County. Some couple reached out to him, and he pointed him in my direction. So I'm going to start with the one that was in Orange County. I received the report on October 19, 2020. We're going to call the witness Paul. All the names have been changed to protect the identity of the witnesses. And it was the time was 12:30 a.m. The location was West Point U.S. Military Academy in Orange County, New York. Now, West Point is a federal property, and they really shouldn't have been on there. They could have gotten arrested, but these were college kids that were off for the summer, and they wanted to go and camp at West Point. They knew a location on the outside of the fence, which was broken, and they had snuck in through the broken fence. So on the date it happened was August 3rd, 2020. The witness said there was a group of 6 of them, 3 men, 3 women, and they snuck onto the grounds of West Point to go camping overnight. And at dusk, they began to start hearing movement all around them. Thinking it was the military police, they put up their hands and surrendered and said, okay, you got us, you know what I mean? Come out and arrest us. But no one ever came out to arrest them, which made them very confused. So the men grabbed their flashlights and started to look to see who was out there. And what they did was they actually seen shadows moving from tree to tree. And they weren't really sure what they were dealing with at the time. And then at one point later on in the evening, they started to hear howling and growling. And the girls got scared and they said, okay, maybe it's time for us to leave. And just as they started to leave, they heard creatures. What they heard was a group of animals running towards them. They didn't know what was coming at them at that point. They just heard something charging at them through the woods, like 3 or 4 different animals charging at them. So they took off running for that hole in the fence. And when they got into the hole of the fence and they looked back, they could see what they looked like, what they described to me as werewolves. They said they looked like werewolves. They were 9 feet tall. They were black, and the guys jumped in everybody jumped in their cars and they got away. But the guys went back the next day to get all their gear, because they had set up the tents and everything, and they had their gear there. But when they ran out, they were leaving everything behind. They just like, we're getting out of here, because they didn't know what was coming at them. They said it sounded like a herd of elephants coming at them. And when they went back the next day, the guys went back the next day, they found their tents shredded into a million pieces, all 3 tents, and their backpacks and their equipment and everything was just thrown all over the woods. So after I interviewed this gentleman over the phone, I actually drove out to Orange County. It's not really that far from me, West Point. And I drove out and I met him, Paul, and his girlfriend, Wendy, we'll call her Wendy, at the local diner, and we talked. And I took a very long, detailed report. Like I said, I didn't want to get too intricate in all the information, because I had put 4 reports together for tonight, and I didn't know how much time we were going to have. But when I went there and we sat there and we talked, and I was there for like 2 hours with them, and I filled, it was just a ton of stuff, recorded a ton of stuff, everything. We actually went back to this road where they had parked their cars on, where they sneak in, and it's a dead end road off a back road. It's a back road. It's a dead end road. And from the street, you can see the fence, where the fence was broken, where you could sneak in. But from the other side, the way the hedgerows were growing and the bushes and the shrubs were growing, you couldn't tell. If you were on the inside, you couldn't tell the fence was broken. You could only tell from the outside. Now, he invited me to go in with him. He was going to show me the location. But at the time, I was a federal employee, and I didn't want to get arrested on federal property. So I chose not to go in. When they were telling me the story, his girlfriend, Wendy, she broke down and she was crying hysterical, and he had goosebumps and he had tears in his eyes. And I could see these kids were serious as a heart attack. So what they thought they seen were a group of werewolves chasing them out of the woods. Now, I had never heard of Dogman being on the grounds at West Point. Now, people have to understand, West Point is 25 square miles of property. They do reenactment, war reenactments on it all the time. And I've heard of Bigfoots being on there in West Point, but I had never heard of any Dogmen until this one experience.
Wow,
And
that's intense.
Yeah, it was. These kids were, they were college kids. They were off for the summer, and they said, "Let's go, sneak on the property and have a camp out." But they didn't expect to run across what they ran across that night. They were probably, when it was all said and done, they were probably wishing it was the MPs coming to arrest them.
Oh, I'm sure they were. Can you say mentally scarred?
Yes, mentally scarred. Yes, I mean, they were especially at least Wendy. She was really in bad shape. I don't know about the other guys' girlfriends, but the couple that I interviewed and I hung out with, both of them were mentally scarred. Yeah, like they're just like, like when I tried to explain to them what these creatures were, Like, they're not werewolves. They're not humans who turn into werewolves. These are creatures that are here. They're flesh and blood, and they can be killed, if you know where to shoot them. And I said, but you know, they just wanted you out of that area that night because you guys didn't get away from them. And I tried to emphasize this. You guys didn't get away from them. They just drove you out. Because if they wanted you, they would have gotten all 6 of you, which scared them even more when I told them that. But I was being honest with them.
Oh, sure. And I'm glad you told them that. Just
Yeah.
telling them the truth, which is
Yeah.
what they need to know. Yeah, definitely. What other case files do you have for us?
Well, yeah, the other ones were you were the one who hooked me up with these people. And it was I received this on 8/15/20, and we'll call the witnesses Rachel and Lindsay, and their encounter happened on 5/25/2007. Right, 2007. So it must have came. I must have got it years later. It was 10:30 at night. When the encounter happened, it happened out on Suffolk County in Long Island, New York. And the witnesses went on to explain to me that Rachel, she was only like 11 years old at the time, and her girlfriend Lindsay were at their summer house, Rachel's summer house on Long Island, and they had to use the restroom, and the only restroom in the house was working was down in the basement. And as they were coming up out of the basement window, they seen leaning against a tree or from behind a tree a creature that they said looked like a werewolf. And that's the common theme in most of these reports. Everybody calls them werewolves, but the creature hadn't seen them at that point until Lindsay had made a noise. She gasped and she made a noise, and then the creature seen them. And the creature stepped out into the moonlight, and that's when they got a really good look at it. And they said the creature was about 9 feet tall. It had red eyes. It was black in color. And when it noticed the girls, it stepped out from behind a tree, and the girls ran up to the main house upstairs and told their parents. Rachel told her parents what had happened. You got to remember that these girls are only 11 years old at this time, and told the parents what happened. And the father actually went out with a flashlight and looked out there. But if I remember correctly, Rachel's parents' house bordered a preserve out on Long Island, so there was like her right across the street from her house was a nature preserve. So when the father went out and looked, he didn't see anything. The creature was gone. And, I was trying to stick with stuff from New York,
Sure.
Yeah, or all the reports. I just figured you wanted me to pull stuff that was from New York. So that's what I was pulling, but like I said, I edited everything down. I didn't know how intricate you want to get. We really didn't have a long discussion on this, so I edited a lot of stuff out because I had 4 of them that I wanted to discuss tonight, and so the next one I received, this one goes back to 2019, and we'll call the witness Janet. The time was 1:00 in the morning. The location was Tioga County, New York. Tioga County is Western New York. It's northwest of New York, bordering Pennsylvania. And Janet was driving home from a veterinarian's office on Route 89 late one evening with her neighbor and her neighbor's dog. They had just brought her neighbor's dog to a veterinarian, emergency vet, when Janet seen up along the road, in the middle of the road, a figure. She didn't know what it was at first. She thought it was a large dog. And then the creature stopped in the middle of the road, and Janet pulled up to it and looked at it, and it looked at Janet, and she described the creature being about 40 inches at the shoulder. This particular creature never stood up on two legs. It constantly stayed down on all fours. And she said it was about 40 inches at the shoulder, and you could add like another 10 inches for its head above its shoulders. She said from nose to tail, it was about 6 foot long. And when I spoke to Janet on this, I said, "Are you sure you just didn't see a large wolf? You know, because that's not that big from nose to the tip of the tail, 6 feet long." And she said, no, this thing was not like any wolf she had ever seen before. And they just locked eyes for, she said, it felt like time had stopped. And she was there for like, she said she felt like they were there for like an hour, but it was only like 3 minutes. And she described the creature. Let's see what she said. Yeah, less than 3 minutes. And again, this creature was black in color. Black was with black eyes. She said this creature had black eyes. And yeah, the Route 89 up in Cayuga County. When you get upstate New York, these truck routes don't have any lights on them, and they're infamously pitch black. And even when you're driving with your high beams on, it's still really hard to see on these roads because they're so dark. Because up in Cayuga, Tioga County, I can't even pronounce it. It's an Indian name. You're talking about the Adirondack mountain range, and the Adirondack mountain range is 6 million acres. So, you know, the mountains are large up there and vast. So, you know, she just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. And this thing just stepped out into the middle of the road and right in front of our car.
That sure is a bad place to break down, too.
Oh, God, don't even say that. That would be
Yeah.
the last thing you want to do is break down on those roads. Absolutely, yeah. And the last one I got, again, I received it in September 17 of 2018. And the witness's name, we'll call him Bill. The encounter actually happened on February 2nd of 2018, around 8 p.m. This location was Boone County, New York. Boone County, again, is northwest that borders along the Pennsylvania. It's actually Boone County is the county in front of Tioga County. It's like right next to Tioga County. And again, you have the mountain range, the Adirondack mountain range running through this county. And on this particular night, Bill heard some howling coming from the woods, and he's a farmer, and he had cows and some livestock, and the livestock was scared, and he had heard these howling, and he thought it was coyotes, and he went and he got a neighbor, and we'll call him Jerry. And Jerry and Bill loaded up their shotguns, thinking they were just going to drive out into the woods and take care of these nuisance coyotes. That's what they thought they were going to deal with. When they got into Bill's quad runner, and they headed up the road, and when they got up the road, they seen the creature. Billy describes the creature as a werewolf again. He said to him it looked like a werewolf, and it stood about 9 feet tall. Large canine head. He said the head was really large, with pointed ears on the top of its head. Its eyes were, he described his eyes of this creature as being yellowish orange. He said it looked yellowish orange, and he said he was built like a bodybuilder with really, really long arms and big hands and broad shoulders. It was black and gray, this particular creature, and he had very large, sharp, pointy teeth. At one point, the creature stepped out from behind a tree, and his his neighbor Jerry shot it with the shotgun. He said when he shot it with the shotgun, that this creature actually jumped 30 feet across the road and 15 feet up in a tree. Now, people don't realize that these creatures can jump far, far distances. I believe that they can jump up to 60 feet, either straight up or straight across if they want to. It's just a lot of reports I've taken over the years where these creatures have jumped massive amounts of distance. And what most people don't realize are that local wolves, our regular local wolves, can jump about 10, 12 feet straight up in a year. So a creature like this to jump 15 feet up in a tree is easy. I mean, granted, it was wounded because Jerry had shot it with the shotgun, but I don't think that people give these creatures enough credit. Like when people see these creatures from a distance and they say, "Oh, we were about 50 feet away." They don't realize that if this creature wanted you, it could probably jump 50 feet and get you in a blink of an eye. It never has to take off running. If it just explodes and jumps at you, it just takes you down like that. So they got in the quad runner and they turned around and they started to drive off. He said at that point, the creature began to chase them, and he described the creature's energy. He said the creature had an evil energy about him. He was the only one out of all of them that mentioned the creature's energy. Billy really felt a negative energy from this particular creature that they were dealing with up there in Boone County.
I'm glad you brought that point up again. There's so many people I talk with where at first they basically make it clear that they think they got away from the dogman they encountered. But one of the things I do is just to make sure they understand that that's not the case. You were so greatly outclassed that the fact you got away is a testament to the fact that the dogman didn't want you. And bouncing back to Rachel's account.
Okay.
My heart sank. I mean, people have some things wrong about dogman encounters. It's all too easy to think, for example, that if you have an encounter at home, that's going to be the best place to have an encounter. But in so many ways, that can be the worst place to have an encounter, because if you're out in the woods, way out in the woods, wherever it is, you don't live there. You can avoid the place. You get out of there in one piece. Okay, I'm never going back. Well, if you're at home and have an encounter, obviously, totally different matter. To highlight it, there was a young man, this was years ago. This was about 10 years ago or so, I think. There was a young man who, and by young man, I mean, I think he was probably 12 or 13-ish. He was in bed one night and he heard something out on the street and got out of bed, walked over to the window, and he just parted the drapes enough to be able to look out. And the street was lit by street lights, but he still couldn't see all that well. Well, as he's looking around, just felt like he was sneaking a peek. Everyone else seemed to be asleep, and he was just looking out there trying to see what he could, to try and identify what made this noise, and also just to take a look at how things looked late at night. Well, all of a sudden he noticed motion across the street between two houses. So he's focused on that area, and then out of the shadows came this dogman. He didn't know what dogmen were back then, but out of the shadows, he said, came a werewolf. And the werewolf walked out to the street, and as he's watching it, he's kind of tightening up that hole that he's peeking through the drapes to try and look at this quote unquote werewolf. Well, all of a sudden the werewolf just snapped its head up and locked eyes right on his position, like it was staring right into his eye, because he only had one eye, I'm sure, looking out the drapes there. Well, after it did that, just a split second after it did that, it made haste coming all the way across the street in his direction and across his front yard towards his house. And he just tightened the drapes back together so he couldn't be seen. And just imagine the horror of seeing that. You see a dog man coming across the street. It looks up and seemingly looks right at you, even though you're peeking through a small hole in the drapes. Imagine the horror of that. So now you've got to lay in your bed the rest of the night and you're just lit, listening for any hint that this thing has broken into your house and it's probably heading up the stairs, heading your way. It knows what room you're in. Just imagine the horror of that. So that's why I say having an encounter at home, that's got to be one of the worst places to have an encounter.
Yeah,
Like you said.
and I agree with you. I mean, your home is your safe space. So when you have a bad experience at home with any of these cryptids or just anything paranormal in general, it really robs you of that feeling of being safe and snug in your own home with the windows closed and the doors locked and under your covers and stuff like that. I mean, I know when I spoke to Rachel, she was only 11 years old and she said she had nightmares for years, and the same thing with a Billy. Billy actually went on to try to get professional help because it was so bad. It was so bad with him, it really messed him up so bad seeing something like that. I mean, and there's a lot more to Billy's story. I edited, like I said, I condensed a lot of stuff for the show tonight. I didn't know how long we were going to go, but so yeah, no, and this stuff stays with you for your whole life, especially at a young age. It stays with you for your whole life, and whenever you talk about it or read about it or hear about it, you relive those experiences like they happened yesterday.
Oh, sure you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate too.
Yeah, it's bad.
It is. Patrick, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Good man. Sorry to take so much time away from you when you have so many interesting things to share as well. Please do that now. I know you've got some case files that you've prepped to share tonight also, so please do that.
Will do. My team is actually starting out for the special response teams for the NADP. So I kind of get more intense encounters, if there is such a thing. My first case is actually in Tennessee. It's about an hour and a half away from the LBL, which I'm sure everybody here has heard of. Her case is really interesting to me because it actually kind of gets away from the norms of Dogman. Whereas a lot of people think, dogmen are migratory animals, kind of moving back and forth. She seems to have had a pack set up on her property. I'll call her Laura for anonymity. But she's had the full gambit of, waking up in the middle of the night to Dogman tapping on her cabin window. Livestock disappearing, watching her. Actually, some of the cooler photos that I've gotten from her involve her working in the yard, and you can see in the background there's a Dogman hiding. She's well. Let me say that her case is actually the exception, not the example. I've actually spoken with you about her before, Vic. This is the lady that was shooting at Dogman so much that they've gotten used to her. And I didn't even think that would be possible because most of the time when a shooting occurs, the encounter gets much, much worse. And in her case, I don't know if it's the calibers that she's using, because she's using very small calibers, that I don't know if it's just not phasing the Dogman or if she has something else entirely going on. But about midsummer, she started leaving water out for them and has actually kind of gotten to where they almost have like a homeostasis going on with the encounter. We actually brought in a PhD in ethology, which is animal behavior. I'm really interested in getting Dr. Reed involved with this case to get more understanding about maybe the motive behind Dogman and the way they approach us. She's had since then, since the summer, she still gets watched quite a bit, but they don't approach them at all. Whereas before, she was literally terrified that one of them was after her daughter. Um, and she's had stuff where her car got damaged from a dog man. Just stuff like that, you know.
Wow, poor thing. Life's difficult enough without having problems like that to deal with.
Right. Well, especially since she actually sold everything she owned to move to this property in Tennessee with her family. So there is no egress out of that.
Wow. Yeah, I'd say not. That's horrible. What's she gonna do?
Actually, we're actually looking to set up a long-term surveillance type of investigation there. We've run into a few hiccups with power there. Her property is more or less homesteadish and runs on a generator. So we're gathering up enough solar equipment to be able to run full-time surveillance 24/7 there, and maybe find a little bit more peace for there if she decides to stay, or if she can leave, or if she needs to leave, then I mean, what's more important, your belongings or your family, you know?
Yeah, no doubt about that. And unfortunately, it sounds like she's awfully remote and isolated. That definitely doesn't help.
Yeah, she's like I said, probably about an hour and a half drive from the LBL, up in the mountains. She does have quite a bit of topography to her land, and quite a bit of running water, and it does seem to be prime time habitat for dogman. And even what makes it even worse than that is she had a temporary site set up for her cabin to be, but they were going to build a homestead, what looks to be where the den for the dogmen are. So
Oh,
definitely a lot of rethinking going on in that.
yeah, I'd say so. That's not good.
Right. Uh, my second case file uh, is one that actually brought me to the NADP. Uh, Fair warning, this might be a little gruesome for some people in the chat if you're listening. Kind of viewer discretion is advised. A friend of mine's dad passed away under some very odd circumstances. It's still an ongoing investigation, so I'm just going to say it's between Dallas and the Oklahoma border. But his case is very similar to the Christopher Whiteley case, wherein he left out of his house, and he was an older gentleman, but he walked to the store every day, got himself a drink, got himself a pack of cigarettes, and then he went back to the house, and he did this every day. Last summer, he went out one day and never came back. They found his body about a half a mile away 7 days later, in very, very bad shape. Both of his femurs were snapped, which there's no animals in that area that are capable of snapping a human femur. He was very much so dismembered, no signs of scavenging from anything, and he was found about 150 yards off the road up against a wood line. So that's really kind of what got me into Dogman, is because I remember growing up watching Unsolved Mysteries and being that kid that wasn't really interested in the true crime parts of it, but the cryptid stuff, now that was cool. And that's, like I said, that just kind of dawned me back to the Michigan Dogman. And when I found out about that, I went digging and found the NADP and joined up.
Yeah, that is a pretty gruesome case. Some of these encounters, they don't end well, with the eyewitness going one way unscratched and the dogman heading its way. Sometimes it does get ugly, but then again, we don't know for sure what it was that did that. It's possible it could have been something besides a dogman, maybe another cryptid, but sure does point in the direction of it being a dogman.
Right. Well, like I said, it reminds me too much of the Christopher Whiteley case where, he went from his house to walk a quarter mile to the road to get a ride to work, and they found him a half mile in the other direction, unalived, in a pretty gruesome manner, and wedged up underneath scrub brush. That was either his last attempt to try to get away, or he was stashed there, but nothing had eaten on him, and the way he was killed, it's not really indicative of natural wildlife in that area. I know a couple of years later they came back out and said it was a mountain lion that did it, but the way he died is not the way a mountain lion takes out prey or people.
Yeah, I'd say not. Yeah, that's really tragic and unfortunate. What about the other case files you have ready to share with us?
Those are the only two that I brought tonight, actually. I've got another gentleman up in Oklahoma that I've actually talked with you about, but I have not cleared it with him as to whether or not I can talk about his story here tonight. Obviously in the NADP, we have a contract that we sign that if a witness does want us to talk about it, then I definitely will. But if they want to remain anonymous completely, then I will absolutely respect that.
Well, that's good. That's really good. That's how it should be. Well, I've got some questions for you too then. Al, if you could do an investigation in a state you've never researched in before, what state would that be and why?
Oh man, I would have to say Montana. Because I like the Rocky Mountains, and I just all that wilderness. There's more there than meets the eye, and I just love to be up in the mountains. I think I should have been born a mountain man, but Montana. That's where I want to go. I would definitely go to Montana.
Yeah, that's beautiful country.
Yeah.
I can understand why that was your choice. And everyone listening in the live chat, now's the time for you to type your questions that you have for Al and Patrick in all caps. That way I won't miss them. Patrick, you've never had a dogman sighting. How much concern do you have regarding what a sighting of your own might do to your interest in investigating them?
Honestly, I've kind of taken the we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but I have definitely had an interesting past to where I do really well under pressure. Especially scary situations, kind of just tying back to my paranormal investigation. So I'm not too concerned about it. I also don't look forward to it at the same time,
Yeah, understandably so.
An encounter is definitely going to come with the territory of what I'm doing, but I'll hold off on it as long as possible.
No, I can understand that, and I can understand why. Let's get to the first question now from the live chat. It's from Andres Carrizales, and Andres wants to know, I guess this is directed towards you, Patrick. Did either case show any signs of something colliding with the person in question from the side or behind them?
No. With the Christopher Whiteley case, his throat was torn out. With the other case, it appears that's the same way that he passed away. But they actually had to wait like 4 months for a bone report to come back. He was that predated upon. But it looks like that was the straw that did it.
Yeah, I can understand why. That's a very delicate area. I've got one here for you, Al, from Jamie Hecht. And Jamie wants to know, Al mentioned dogmen jumping. Have either Al or Pat seen them jump? And if so, how far, please?
No, I've never seen them jump. But I know from being out there and investigating and just working with regular wolves and seeing how high a regular wolf can jump. You would be amazed how high they get up there. And so I just say something that size bipedally with those kind of haunches, they're just made for exploding and jumping, I just, like tigers can jump 18 to 20 feet straight up in the air. So I don't think these things would have any problem jumping at great distances. I really don't. It's just one man's opinion. No, I've never seen them jump. That's the short answer. Sorry.
No, that's a good answer. If you haven't seen them, then nothing more you can do to describe that. The next question up is from Baby Girl, and she wants to know, what's the scariest dogman encounter you investigated? I'm not sure if this is for you, Al, or for Patrick, but take your pick, either one.
Go ahead, Pat.
I would actually say, for outcome wise, I would have to go with my case north of Dallas, and that being the possible fatality. Um, as far as like far-reaching effects on the witness and the area of it, I would have to go with an Oklahoma case that I was handed, where the gentleman definitely does seem to be suffering with some trauma from that.
And understandably so. Poor guy. That's horrible. Looks like the next question is from D Truth, and he wants to know, hello, Vic. Patrick, do you think dogmen are natural animals? Thanks.
I do. Honestly, as far back as they've been documented in our history, I believe that they are very much so connected with the cynocephaly. And I think that over time, we've either forgotten about them or our history's forgotten about them. And I think they're still very much so here.
Yeah, that's a good hypothesis. It is. We're going to ask you this next question, Al. It's from Enrique. And Enrique wants to know, what do you guys think a dogman is?
I think a dogman is an interdimensional creature. I think it comes here to hunt. We have a lot of prey here. And I think they're a super predator as far as being in our realm. I've spoken to a lot of Native American tribes in this area, and they all say that that these creatures walk between worlds like the Sasquatches. And I've been lucky enough to be invited to symposiums and get to sit down with world-renowned psychics who happen to be sitting at my table. And I asked them all the same question: where do you believe these creatures come from? And every single one of them, to a person, says they're interdimensional. So I think when they're here in our realm, they're flesh and blood, and they can be killed. I know they can be killed. They have been killed. But I also think, like the Sasquatch, no one's ever found a body in the woods or a skeleton or anything like that. And I think there's a reason for that. And the Native Americans believe that they walk between worlds.
Well, if they can do that, that sure is one heck of an advantage. It really is. Looks like Darth Reven 2.0 has the next question. I'll send this one your direction here, Patrick. He wants to know, do all cryptids fight each other in groups?
Honestly, I would have to say no on that. We do have reports of dogmen and Bigfoot fighting, but I've never heard of like rakes running together or Wendigo or anything of that sort. So I would definitely have to go with no.
What are your thoughts on that, Al?
I think when you have two premier predators like a dogman and a Bigfoot, I think if they do cross paths, yes, there'll be a territorial fight. I know I've researched an account out of where was it, North Carolina, where the dogmen were driving the Cherokee Native Americans out of the woods because they were hunting in the dogman territory. So the Native Americans came up with a plan to go to the Sasquatch's sacred sites where their burial mounds, take a skull from the Sasquatch, put it on a stick in the dogman territory. And when the Sasquatches found out that the skull was missing, they started a big war with the dogmen. And the Native Americans thought this would be a good way for one of these two to be driven away. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for them because the fight ended up, coming down onto their location where they were camped out, and they were the ones that ended up having to get out of Dodge because these two creatures were going at it. As far as Wendigos and rakes and stuff like that, I don't think they fight each other. No. But as far as the premier predators like the dogman and the Bigfoot, yeah, I think they do.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard a story about numbers of dogmen fighting numbers of Sasquatch, but I have heard that story that you just mentioned. So, I guess maybe that is proof that sometimes that does happen. If that story is true, I guess we're never going to know. But
yeah,
if it is, that's all the proof we need then. This next question is from Alex Ventura. He wants to know, where's the video evidence? There's never any. This is why skeptics always win. Well, Al's laughing, and I'm laughing too, because he knows, Al knows, I know, Patrick knows there is video evidence. Video evidence that would blow your socks off, but just because you haven't seen that evidence, that doesn't mean it's not out there. So, yeah, that's my take on that. I shouldn't have answered that question. I shouldn't have put my 2 cents out there, but sorry, I couldn't help myself. But let's throw this to Al. I think Al's chomping at the bit. He wants to.
No, I agree with you. I tell people this all the time, Vic. People I meet at symposium, and I say, "Where's the photographic evidence? Where's the video evidence?" And I say, just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's out there. Believe me, it's out there. People have these creatures on their property. People film them all the time, but they don't release that evidence to anybody because, it was bad enough back in the day with photoshopping. Now with AI, no one's ever going to believe any video is real anyway. So why put it out there and be ridiculed by people for no reason? But it's out there. Alex, it's definitely out there. Believe me. I've seen it. I know Vic has seen it, and it's out there.
Yeah, it definitely is. What are your sentiments on that there, Patrick?
Actually, I have seen photographic evidence of dogmen from the NADP that absolutely crystal clear. This is dogman. He's right here. And you show it to a skeptic and they'll turn around and tell you, oh, that's a scene from Dog Soldiers. And you take them and show them the wolves from Dog Soldiers, and they don't look anything alike, but it's still got to be that. I think sometimes skeptics just want to be skeptics. And I also think that a lot of people, when they're having encounters, the last thing on their mind is, I should pull out my camera and take a picture of this thing that's scaring me half to death.
Yeah, those are really good points.
Yeah, excellent point, Patrick.
Yeah, definitely. This next question is from Elaine Romero Douglas, and Elaine wants to know, do you think the reported popping sounds could be some physical calibration from being on 4 feet to 2? Their arms are described as long, and I'm wondering if they might semi-recede to be on all fours.
Short answer, yes.
I would actually have to agree with that answer wholeheartedly.
Well, that was easy. This next question from D Truth, that kind of touches on what you just answered 2 questions ago. He wants to know, what do you feel is the best piece of dogman evidence that you saw?
I'll take it. Honestly, the best evidence I've ever seen was taken from a trail camera from an investigation that the NADP has done. I believe it was done in Ohio, but don't quote me on that. But you can actually see like the back of the shoulder on the dogman is wounded, and it is about as crystal clear as you can ever get from a trail camera. And to me, that did it right there. You know, that was the proof that I needed.
Yeah. Just like you highlighted, there's some really incredible evidence out there. As clear as if you sent your dog out the back door, it stops about 10 feet away, turns around to look at you, and you've got a camera up just filming it. But like you said, I mean, just because the evidence is out there and you haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I can't say that enough. I hear that all the time, and it's a really weak idea that just because you haven't seen it, it's not out there. It just doesn't make any sense. Let's find a question for Al here. Let's find a good one here. This one's from Bang Bang. She wants to know, Al, did you ever go back into the same woods you were headed to before you got stopped by the men in black?
Yes, I have been back in those woods years later. But yes, I have been back in those woods. Yeah, absolutely.
Huh, I was wondering if you were going to answer that question or not.
Well, it's been years, and I'm retired now. So
I get it.
Yeah.
I do. Patrick, baby girl wants to know, what's the tallest dog man you heard about?
I've heard of 10 plus foot. Now I've heard encounters on this channel actually that go upwards of 12, but personally hearing from an eyewitness themselves in person, 10 plus foot.
Well, that's tall enough right there. That's
Right.
sizable. It really is. Let's find a question for Al now. Andres Kirizales wants to know, did any cases have the witnesses see the dog man with the invisible camo?
No,
No, I haven't heard any of that.
no.
I've heard eyewitnesses report that, but it really is few and far between when it happens. Very rarely.
And every dog man I've ever seen didn't have any kind of invisible camo on them either. So, just from my perspective as an eyewitness, no.
Well, that answers that one. Patrick, Ascent of Phoenix wants to know, how do you think dogmen evade being sighted and captured? Are they normal flesh and blood creatures or supernatural?
I definitely believe they're normal flesh and blood creatures while they're here. My opinion differs a little bit than Al's. Like I said, I think they are from here. They've been here all along, and we've just forgotten about them over time. As far as evading or being sighted, honestly, I think their motivation to be around us is more curious than anything. And most of the time, one of the tricks that we implore is to have a camera facing behind you. And most of the time, that's where you're going to find your dogman, is behind you, just checking you out.
Yeah, the thought of having one of these things creeping up behind you, that doesn't give you the warm and fuzzies, but like you said, that's how they normally do. That's their MO. Al, I've got a question for you from D Truth, and D wants to know, there's been a lot of werewolf movies and TV series with rakes. Do you think it's a soft disclosure or just coincidence?
No, I think it's soft disclosure. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't believe in coincidence, the truth. I don't think there are any coincidences. I've been in this game too long to believe in coincidences.
Good man. I can understand why you might think that. I can See, good arguments both ways on
Yep,
that.
absolutely.
Both ways, but yeah, I think you're probably right there, Al. How about one from Bad Pup for you, Patrick? He wants to know how many different types of Dogman and Squatch are there? Thanks. I know of many different types each.
As far as I've recognized, there's 3 different types for Dogman. Of course, you got your just normal standing upright canid. You've got your hyena type, and then you've got your type 3, the giant Van Helsing style werewolf. As far as Squatch, I am actually not that versed in Sasquatch. I think it's gotten a lot of attention, and I didn't really feel drawn to that.
That's a good, honest answer. That's always appreciated. Let's try one more question and direct this one at Al. It looks like Scott Langhorst wants to know, can werewolves and dogmen breed with each other?
I don't believe so. No, I don't believe that werewolves actually exist. I don't believe that people actually turn. I mean, if you want to consider a skinwalker or a Wendigo, a werewolf, that can shapeshift, but that's more supernatural than a human turning into a upright canine creature. No, I don't believe so.
Yeah, that does seem like one heck of a stretch. I'll never say anything's impossible in this crazy world, but it really does seem like one heck of a stretch that could be possible. It really does. So I agree with you there. All right, let's try one more question here. This one's for Pat. It looks like Elaine Romero Douglas wants to know, what about dogmen and their behaviors unsettles all of you the most? What do you find to be the most frightening about them?
Honestly, as a hunter myself, I would say that their ability to sneak up on you from behind, like a game warden does, that's definitely unsettling. Like I said, most of the pictures we get are from them walking or them coming up from behind you, and you never hear them coming, and that's just like a game warden.
How about you, Al? What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I'd have to say the same thing that Patrick said, because just this October I was out with my cousin, and we had a dogman go off in the woods and set off a pack of coyotes, but we weren't there for the dogman. We were there for the Sasquatches. And when we came down off of the high plateau, that same dogman, I believe, came over to where we were, and he was standing no further than 100 feet behind us up on a small hill, and we didn't hear him come across, and he screamed so loud that it went through my cousin who was standing behind me and through me. And it was crazy because my cousin's father told me before I left the house, bring him home in one piece, and when this thing went off, and I felt it was directed at me personally, that I was back in the woods, and he wasn't happy about it, but I wasn't on the dogman side of the woods. I was on the Sasquatch side of the woods. But I remember turning to my cousin right then and there, and I was like, okay, we have a 4-mile hike out. We're not going to stop for water or breaks. We're gonna take these 60-pound packs and walk out of these woods nonstop, because I didn't want the dogman to flank us and get in front of us, because there's only one way out, and I didn't want to have to try to fight my way out of there that night, and it was crazy night, and the screams were so loud, and it was the last thing I expected to run into was the dogman. And I think because the dogman was out that night and prowling about, that nothing else was. Yeah, it was very, and my cousin is very sensitive, like psychic sensitive, and he's got a good control over his emotions. And the kid, it never shook the kid at all. He's only a 20-year-old kid, and it never shook him at all. Like, he didn't give it a second thought, because I'm so confident in my ability to get us in and out, that he just said, okay, I'm with Cousin Al. We'll be fine. But when it went off the first time, and I sent you that audio tonight, Vic, and you can listen to it, I felt that was directed at me as well, even though we were miles away up on a high plateau. And then when it came over and it was only 100 feet behind us, I mean, if that thing wanted us, it probably could have jumped off that little hill onto my cousin, and then onto me. And it could have had us both. And it could have flanked us at any time it wanted to. But I think it followed us out, honestly. We both felt its energy behind us. And again, they give off a negative vibe, and I think they do that because they feed off of our fear. But we weren't afraid. We took our time and we hiked out. And I'm an old dude, and I'm carrying a 60-pound pack 4 miles nonstop. I've never done that before. But that night, I was going to push it to the limit because I wanted to get him out of there in one piece. So, the way they creep up on you, I mean, for a creature that big and that heavy, and I always think people underestimate their weight as well, They say, oh, it's about 7 feet tall, 400 pounds. I think they're a lot heavier than people think they are.
Yeah, that makes two of us. I think people underestimate their weight all the time. I really do.
Yeah.
Well, it's about time for us to get out of here, gentlemen. Before we do, Al, what would be the best way for dogman eyewitnesses who have had dogman encounters in New York State to report their encounters to you?
Yeah, they could report it on the NADP New York State chapter website, or they could hit me up directly on Facebook on Messenger. If they wanted to just talk to me personally, because being the Regional 3 director, I'd have to deal with states all the way from Maine all the way down to Maryland. So there's a lot of states involved. So yeah, I mean, they could post it on the NADP page, or they could just reach out to me directly.
Well, that makes it really easy. It really does. And poor Al, it doesn't look like the coffee is wearing off. It looks like it's worn off.
Can you hear it in my voice?
No, I can see it. I can see. You've been up for a long time, I know. So you've got me feeling sorry for you.
No, Vic, I'm fine. Believe me, I'm fine. Absolutely, I'm good.
Good.
Let's go another hour.
Okay. No, I can't do that to you. That'd be horrible. Although I do enjoy your company, of course.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Patrick, how about you? How about Texas eyewitnesses? What's the best way for them to contact you about their encounters?
The best way to contact me directly is on Facebook through our Texas state chapters of the North American Dogman Project's page, or you can hit me up on Facebook. And I know you can't see me here. You can search me. I'm wearing a white polo, bald head, sunglasses, can't miss me, from Longview, Texas. That, or you can contact me straight through the North American Dogman Project's website. Also, kind of a shameless plug here, the pictures I was telling you all about, those are on that website in the evidence files. We have MP3s, we have some short videos, we have pictures, and actually another shameless plug for the NADP is we're now 11,000 members worldwide. Definitely a lot of different points of view on the problem, and that's a good thing in my opinion, because that lets us really get a 360-degree view on how to solve this problem.
Yeah, a lot of minds are almost always better than one. So that's a good point. Well, gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing these case files and answering all these questions. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Vic.
Yeah, thank you for having us. And
if I could just say, Vic, the NADP is a better place since Patrick has come aboard. He's a really top-notch rep.
Thank you. You're gonna make me blush, though.
Well, that means a lot coming from you, Al. It really does. So
No,
that's
I don't
great
know
that you said
how
that.
much it means, but I'm sincere when I say it. He's definitely, you know, a big piece to the puzzle. He's a hell of an investigator and a researcher, and we're a better off organization having him with us.
Thank you. Yeah, I've learned a lot from Al over my time with the group. Kenny, Shane, Todd, Bryan Bowden. I mean, you get to really talk with the legends in the field, and they really bring you up to their level pretty quick. So I definitely got to say thank you to y'all guys.
Yeah, Al is a wealth of knowledge. He's being humble, but no matter what Al says here, to be humble, it does mean a lot when he says something like that. It really does.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it. Believe me, that's the kind of guy I am.
Oh, I know. You say what you mean. That's a good quality. Well, gentlemen, like I said, thanks again so much for your time. Remember, if I can ever help you two out, all you have to do is just let me know, because I'd be more than happy to be there for you.
The same for you, Vic.
Well, that's appreciated.
Thank you, Vic. Thank you for having us. It was my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks again so much, guys, and have a great night.
Good night. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
All right, that's a wrap. That's a wrap for another show. But before I get out of here, just to put it out there, if you've had a dogman encounter that you need help with, or maybe you'd like to be a guest on the show, if you go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report, I'll be more than happy to reach out to you and schedule a consultation with you on the phone, so I can find out what's either wrong and what's giving you trouble, or to find out more about your encounter and schedule a show recording with you. But having said that, thanks again so much, everyone, for listening. I really do appreciate it, and have a great night.